Gather around the campfire for another selection of the scariest urban legends ever told. But there's a twist to these tales. Every single one of these stories turned out to be true. It was an eerie sight that drivers reported all across the South in the early 2010s. A mysterious woman in black walking along the highway. She was cloaked in black robes, seemed elderly, and most disturbing, didn't seem to want to talk to anyone. She was sighted hundreds of miles apart, almost like she was a specter haunting the roads. But the actual truth was far less creepy. She was a 56-year-old military veteran named Elizabeth Poles, and she was on a pilgrimage to Winchester, Virginia. She was taking the walk to memorialize her 2 children who died, and she still didn't want to talk to anyone. Some legends, though, are much larger in scale. The Mexican city of Puebla is rich in history, but legend said there was a whole other world below. They spoke of an elaborate network of tunnels used in war to hide who knows what. Most archaeologists scoffed until 2015, when an excavation discovered the remains of a tunnel system that was up to 500 years old. They connected the city center to the famous Loreto Fort and were believed to be used by Mexican soldiers. The tunnels were filled with centuries-old items and are currently being renovated and are open to tourists. And there are the legends with a lighter origin. The Pixar movie Up won the hearts of audiences in 2009 with its story of an elderly widower using balloons to fly his house to South America to memorialize his late wife. And as soon as it became a hit, rumors started circulating that it was being duplicated in real life. Is it actually possible to lift a house off its foundation with balloons and fly it around the world? And were real-life pensioners actually taking flight? People started pulling off experiments to test the stunt from the movie with mixed results. But one man's test made the news. Okay, it wasn't a house, but a man did take flight using balloons in 1982, and his experiment might have actually been the inspiration for the movie. His name was Larry Walters, and he soon would become known as Lawn Chair Larry. Attaching 45 helium balloons to a chair, he took off from San Pedro, California. Unfortunately, he entered controlled airspace near an airport and soon got entangled in power lines. He was arrested for improper use of an aircraft, but to many people watching, he was a folk hero and launched a brief career as a motivational speaker. His chair is even on display at the Smithsonian. And sometimes dark legends come from the happiest nights of the year. It's been a persistent legend going back decades. Happy costumed kids roam the streets on Halloween, picking up free candy from their neighbors. But some nefarious people are passing out tainted candy, and the unfortunate child who bites into it finds poison or a razor blade. While this may have more roots in old fairy tales about witches and their poisoned apple, parents have been consistently worried. This led to a decline in trick-or-treating over the years, and you can forget about passing out those handmade candy apples or popcorn balls. Stick to the Skittles. But has any child ever been poisoned by deliberately tainted candy? The answer is yes and no. There is no plague of evil people poisoning Halloween candy to kill random kids, but there have been similar incidents. One dentist gave kids laxative candies in 1959 and was arrested, and in 1964 a woman gave inedible items including dog biscuits to children she thought were too old for trick-or-treating. But in 1974 a panic hit a high when a boy in Texas died after eating pixie sticks laced with cyanide. A manhunt ensued, and the culprit, his father, who poisoned his own son to collect life insurance money. It wasn't a random poisoning, although he did distribute it to other kids who didn't eat it, and the evil Halloween dad eventually faced lethal injection. Let's travel to the dawn of the digital age for an urban legend that haunted gamers. It was the name on every gamer's lips in the early 1980s. Polybius, a game you should never play. Gamers described the odd addition to their local arcade as a mysterious black-coated arcade cabinet that didn't seem to belong. When people played it, they experienced weird symptoms including hallucinations, seizures, and a strange desire to keep playing. Making it more mysterious, there were reports of black-suited men showing up at any arcade with the game and interrogating those who played it. The theory was that Polybius was a government experiment. But was there any truth to it? The original game has never been proven to exist, but a game designer named Stephen Roach claims he was involved in a game that had to be withdrawn from the market due to its cutting-edge graphics causing seizures and other symptoms. But legends of the game persisted, and many people recall details about it. And while it might not have been a real game, it is now. In 2007 and 2017, games based on the legend were created by independent software designers, and people can now experience the game for themselves, sort of. No reports of mysterious illnesses or men in black yet. Some legends date back a lot longer and can be haunting. Jonathan Buck was a justice of the peace in Massachusetts in the late 18th century and had a reputation as a no-nonsense lawman that might have gotten him cursed for all eternity. The legend states that when an accused witch was brought before him, he ordered her put to death by burning. On the execution pyre, she placed a curse on Buck and on his grave. And when he died and a monument was built to him, a mysterious leg-shaped stain emerged on the stone. No matter how it was cleaned, the stain always returned. Was this the witch's curse for everyone to see? Like many of these legends, there's some truth and some fantasy. There is no record of Jonathan Buck ordering a witch to be burned, and in fact, burning was not an accepted punishment in America. Even at Salem, the accused witches were hung or died through torture. What is true is that mysterious leg-shaped stain. Those tasked with maintaining the cemetery have long been puzzled by it, and the legend refuses to die. While there's no proof that Buck did order a witch burning, there is also no proof it didn't happen. Now let's turn our attention to the most iconic urban legends, the costumed madman. Their names strike fear in everyone's hearts. Jason Voorhees, Leatherface, the Bunny Man? Okay, rabbits may not be terrifying, but to those living in Fairfax County, Virginia in the 1970s, the Bunny Man was all anyone could talk about. Legend said that an axe-wielding maniac was roaming the area killing people. The legend centered around Colchester Overpass, a dark rail overpass where the killer supposedly lurked, waiting for his next victim. The stories varied, and decades later, people still claim that his ghost is haunting the overpass. But there might actually be some truth to the story. Unlike many of these legends, this one can be confirmed with police reports. In 1970, there were 2 reports of a man wearing a bunny suit stalking around the area. He reportedly threatened people with an axe and even smashed a car window at one point. The 2 reports described the suit differently, but both said the bunny man tried to scare them off and shouted about trespassing. There are no reports of the mystery man killing or hurting anyone, and most believe he might have been an escaped mental patient or an eccentric hermit. One thing's for sure, he's long dead now, but some people still claim to see him. And some urban legends are more tragic than horrific. In the mid-1900s, western Pennsylvania had its own cryptid. Some called him the Green Man, others called him Charlie No-Face, but the descriptions were all the same. He was a tall, imposing man who walked the streets at night. He looked normal from behind, but when people approached him, they discovered something horrible. His face was horribly disfigured, almost like he had no face at all. When some fled in terror, the Green Man was never aggressive or violent. Over the years, tourists would roam the area hoping to encounter him, but the origin of the Green Man is much more mundane. Raymond Theodore Robinson was a normal boy until he was seriously injured in an electrical accident as an 8-year-old. His face was badly burned and he was blinded, leaving him seriously disfigured. He lived at home and worked as a craftsman of mats, wallets, and belts, and avoided going outside during the day for fear he would startle people, but nights were his time to roam the streets. The mysterious Green Man was an ordinary man who was loved by his relatives and mourned when he died at 74 in 1985. One rural mystery, though, persisted longer than any other. It began in 1986 in the isolated area of Maine's Belgrade Lakes. The place had few permanent residents, but it was a popular vacation location, except for one issue. The cabins kept getting robbed. Over decades, there were over 1,000 burglaries in the Sleepy region, and the police were stumped. Not only was the culprit never caught, but they only seemed to take a few items from each place and didn't seem interested in valuable things. Rumors began to spread. What kind of eccentric maniac was living in the woods around North Pond? In 2013, they got their answer. The culprit was Christopher Thomas Knight, the man who would become known as the North Pond Hermit. When he was caught, his secluded camp was discovered, stocked entirely with items he had stolen from the cabins and hidden by boulders. He had stolen to survive the winters and had gone decades without any regular human contact. People were stunned by his survival skills, but it didn't stop him from being charged with burglary. While he was sentenced to 7 months in jail, he served almost all of them while awaiting trial and became a bit of a local celebrity. This next legend took place in the most fitting of locations, a haunted house. Walking or riding through a spooky house is a Halloween tradition, though not all of them are up to par. Who's really scared of those dropping skeletons on wires or janky old witch figures trying to jump scare you? But legend says that one haunted house in California, a corpse prop looked really realistic, a little too realistic in fact. When investigators examined it, they discovered it was a preserved corpse. Visitors had been gawking at an actual dead body for who knows how many years. And the scariest part, the legend was completely true. Elmer J. McCurdy seemed destined for a bad end, and when the notorious robber died in a shootout with police, no one was particularly shocked. It was the early 1900s, and a mummified body was a common sideshow attraction. He was first put on display at a funeral home, and then sold to traveling carnivals for decades. But over the years, the records were lost, and many people who bought the body assumed it was a hoax. That led him to being displayed at the Pike Amusement Park in California, where his arm eventually broke off, to the horror of those maintaining the funhouse. After this grim discovery, McCurdy was finally given a proper burial. And it's not the only place a corpse has been found unexpectedly. It's one of the most infamous scary stories. A couple checks into an isolated roadside hotel and gets a room from the shady clerk. They then try to get a good night's sleep, but their room stinks. Eventually, they discover a horrible truth. Hidden under the bed is a rotting corpse. They've been sleeping in a murder room. This legend has persisted, and there are countless stories of people discovering corpses in their room, but has it ever actually happened? More often than you might think. The most infamous incident happened in a budget motel in Memphis, Tennessee, where a couple described the atmosphere as stanky and foul. James and Rhonda Sargent complained to the motel staff, but didn't realize anything was wrong. There were some odd details, like fabric softener sheets stuffed in cracks around the room. The smell only got worse, and weeks later, the body of a missing woman was found under the bed. The police were finally able to get started on the hunt, and her killer was found soon after. But one urban legend is maybe the most common, and this one bites. Are there actually alligators in the sewers of New York? You don't have to worry about one thing. No giant-sized crocs are going to leap up from sewer grates and eat your dog. But sewer alligators do exist, and the city rescues up to 100 every year. While some are illegal pets, they do find some in the sewers. Because sewers are toxic, this isn't a suitably long-term home for alligators, and most are relatively small. But they're probably big enough to deliver a nasty bite to an unfortunate animal control officer who has to wrangle them. Check out Scary Urban Legends to keep you up at night for some more tales from around the campfire, or watch horrifying unsolved internet mysteries for some digital age chillers.